Hello, you amazing people out there, and welcome to the Amazing Action Comics Podcast, where we are all about independent comics. I'm one of your hosts, Angel, with John Pepe.
How's it going, Angel?
Dude, I almost said Phil.
I could hear it. That Charles Barkley hitch, that is golf swing.
There was a slight pause of what the fuck is his
Little
name
hitch. Yeah.
on there. All right, for those of you guys that are brand new, yes, you see John is written there on the bottom of his box there. But there's like 20 Johns at the store that we're at, and so each John has to have a different name other than John because there can only be one. And so John took on the mantle of Phil after his dad, which was pretty cool.
Yep.
So in the store I call him Phil, but here I call him John, and it fucks me up all the time.
So because you were introduced to me under one name and got used to it, and I'm still used to hearing like and waiting for it, like because still at the store, even though right now during business hours I am the only John,
Right?
I am still called Phil, and it's when people see me outside of the store, because I separate, right? So when people see me and they start calling me Phil. Like it doesn't click, it doesn't register,
right.
So it's a weird thing. It's I know how like Harkett feels, I guess. But one of the weirdest things was there's Phil Simms, right?
Yep.
And I actually have met Phil Simms a few times. He was a client at a place that I used to work. Great story about him leading a round of Ain't No Mountain High Enough in a lobby waiting room with a cockatiel, singing and dancing around too. It's Phil Simms, great guy, love the guy. He is currently, I guess, doing ads for Balance of Nature on these vitamins, right? These supplements on the radio, and I'm driving because I at 49, soon to be 50, I exclusively listen to talk radio now, like news radio, like 10 Wins. So I need to know the traffic, even though I'm not driving in where they're telling me where the traffic is. I have to know now. So so he's doing this commercial, and at the end it goes, the announcer, she's saying like, announce your promo, sign on and get this exclusive offer, and be sure to use promo code. And then it cuts to a soundbite of just Phil Simms just shouting his name into a microphone really quick. So Phil, right? and so I'm driving and I'm kind of half listening, and I just hear from the back speaker, Phil. And I'm like, what do I need to do? What do I got to do? It was really threw me for a loop,
Well, what's crazy is you have a name your entire life, and all of a sudden, just like out of the blue, you have to change your name for a split second. Yeah, for reasons. But you grow accustomed to it. Yeah. I mean, in that environment, every time it's just crazy how it just all works. You name something your entire life, and all of a sudden, you can take on. And it's not even a different persona. It's just here's my name now. Here's my new name. Which suck at people.
It's funny because you got to kind of hand it to some people who just take it upon themselves to change their names.
Right.
But then also you have to be like, having not had that choice, having it sort of put upon, you'd be like, why would you do that to yourself? You're making more confusion because there's some people that will know you by your old name, and some people that know you by your new name.
Well, you know what? It depends on the name that you choose. So we're not going to name any names here, but think of the mythical gods. One who went through the labors, and another one that is like the what is she? The god of hunting, warrior. And to change a name from a regular name to a mythical god, that's got to take balls.
Absolutely. But then you're also still setting yourself up for confusion. Like you hear stories of people like, so people who your family, they either because they're just not used to it or won't accept the new name. So you always got to deal with that. Like, why would you choose? I get, okay, this is who I am. Is my, I
like you're Bob your entire life, but now you have to call me Zeus. Okay, Bob. We'll see how that takes. We went off onto a tangent there. We've already gone off a tangent, and we haven't even started the episode. Welcome to the Amazing Action Comics Podcast. This is the Indie Comic Review. This is episode 143. We're getting there, bro. We are getting there. This is we've got comics that are pulled off the shelf, and John and I are going to give our 2 cents on them. We've got a couple for you this week. It's been pretty hefty. Even with this Diamond debacle, I don't think every store is going through it. I think it's just some, but it's just been crazy each week. And this week was a pretty hefty week as far as books were concerned, which was pretty good.
Yeah. I would imagine that the customers that we're already getting from this Mississippi warehouse, the existing customers of the Mississippi warehouse, I think things have been smooth for them. It's just taking on these new accounts and not having the billing and invoicing set up for that is that's it's
weird because I think most of the stuff that was coming out of Olive Branch were reorders. It wasn't anything new. So I wonder if there's accounts that were getting new stuff from the Olive Branch, because from what I understand, Plattsburgh was their main hub, and so everything was coming out of Plattsburgh that was new, and then Olive Branch was mostly like the resolicitations and stuff like that. But who knows? Whatever.
I just don't understand how it's like. Sure, maybe you had to close up abruptly, right? And I get that, but where was the person that was like, hey, before we just start sending out stuff, like, let's make sure we have a proper invoicing and system for this new thing.
But I think it's different when you say abruptly. It's different from like a small business that can kind of like shut a store down in one day because they're just so small. But when you have a huge company, to shut down a warehouse that has that much inventory and switch, you need weeks, if not at least over a month.
Right.
To have everything transition. So if you've not taken the time to transition your billing and everything like that, that's just it's weird.
I'm not a big IT guy, but in my mind, it just feels like copy, paste, send. That's just like,
sure, let's go with that.
That guy was on vacation, right? And he comes back, he's like, whoa, wait, what happened? Like, he has no idea any of this is going on.
Oh, no, it's just crazy. It's crazy. But you know what? Yeah, it's fine now. So for those of you guys that don't know, Diamond is one of the distributors here in the U.S. that distributes comic books to ton of comic book stores, and they closed down their major warehouse in Plattsburgh, which is really close to Canada, and that was their main hub for distribution. And so it kind of caused all this confusion with billing and sending books and not sending books, or sending invoices that didn't have the books on them that were coming out that week. So yeah, it sent people into a fury, that's for sure. But it seems like they're maybe getting their stuff back together, and hopefully the next week will be a lot better, but we'll see. It doesn't affect anybody from the retail end. So like when you come into the store, the books are there. It's just everything that goes on behind the scenes. This is why we have white hair. It's because they can't get their shit together. All right, but let's go into something happier. Let's get into the reviews. We do have a couple of books for you this week. I guess I'm going to start it off. So yeah, we're going to start off with my book, Moondogs from Image Comics. So this is part of the Horizon experiment. You can see the logo right there in the bottom. And basically all this was an experiment of taking popular genres and throwing sort of like the minority mix into it. So they have 5 one-shots that they're coming out with. And what they're hoping with these one-shots is there's enough intrigue and enough demand that they'll be able to solicit them as an ongoing series. So right now we just have the 5 one-shots that are coming out. This, I believe, is the 3rd installment of the 5 books. So you had the Manchurian that came out already, the Sacred Damned, and now you have Moondogs that just came out. And basically what you have is the 5 books is this is the way that sort of being solicited is a Chinese James Bond, which was the Manchurian. Then you've got a Muslim John Constantine, which I think is
the Sacred Dam, because that
the Sacred Dam, yeah. And then you've got this family of werewolves, which is the Moondogs with East African descent. And Evil Dead for Black Nerds, which is the next book that's coming out, which is called Motherfucking Monsters.
I love the title.
Great title. And then a reverse Indiana Jones, whatever that means. I don't know if he's inside out or if he's walking backwards.
Skinless Indiana Jones.
Skinless Indiana Jones. But yes, so I've got the 3rd installment. I saw the cover, thought it was kind of intriguing. I completely forgot that this was happening with the Horizon experiment, but I think it's pretty cool. To take these genres and then throw in sort of like a cultural mix to it. and see if you can bring out some of that cultural flair into the story. So let's start with the creative team. You got script by Tanana Rivedu. I'm sorry, I probably butchered that name. Art by Kelsey Ramsey. Colors by Jose Villarrubia. And then letters by Jeff Powell. So, all right. So, in a short, this book is basically about werewolves, with the premise of the main character, Nala, right there on the cover, of being of East African descent. That's all you really need to know. And so, being a one-shot, you have to get an entire story in from beginning to, you have to have a beginning, a middle, and an end to close it out. Can you leave it open for possible issues going forward? Yes. But I think when it comes to one-shots, it's really hard to get a lot of information in when you're working with I think this is about 32 pages, a little bit thicker than normal. So you get a little bit more story. So with this particular story, you're getting sort of like an insight and a portion of her life. And so what you're getting is sort of like this battle between what they're calling ferals, which are like these werewolves that are just going out there killing. And then you have Nala, who's narrating the story about her family, her boyfriend, and her brother kind of getting mixed in with these people that are the ferals. And so you have this whole story based around her trying to protect her brother from following the ferals around and possibly getting killed because they're crazy bastards. And it's sort of like a little bit of a detective story of her trying to figure out what these guys are doing, and this killing that happened at the very beginning that she's going through. And at the same time, revealing her secret that she's a werewolf to her boyfriend. Classic, because you would think that somebody would be scared. He was actually turned on, which was the funniest shit ever in this. So story-wise, there's a lot in here. There isn't a lot in regards to when we're talking about, culturally or cultural background and using that as a premise within the book as sort of either its own character or as a backdrop. I didn't get any of that. Other than just looking at the color of her skin, she looked almost Spanish to me. There wasn't any reference to where she came from because the book is they're in Miami right now. So she lives in Miami with her family. So there's nothing about East Africa in here other than them telling me in the solicitations that she's of East African descent. So I would have liked to see a little bit more of, maybe just a little bit of, we came from here. We have this ability to do this because of this from where we're at, and now we live here, kind of thing. It could have been a page or so, could have been a flashback or whatever it was. For me, that part was just missing, especially if we're looking at, creating a one-shot of a genre and using marginalized characters, but we don't get any background from that. So I didn't get any of that. But with that being said, the story itself was really easy to follow. And like I said, it was sort of like just a portion of this person's life, just telling the story. And it's being narrated by Nala from beginning to end. When I read through it, it's funny because we'll talk about the next book or later on the one that we read together with an established actual comic writer, somebody who writes for comics. It read different, and it read so different that I had to look up the writer because I've not heard of them before, and I wanted to see what they've written before. And so when I looked it up, I said, that makes sense. So the person that wrote the book, I know I butchered her name before, her last name Due, is an author. So writes novels and short stories. And not to take anything away from what I read, but it almost read that way. So it was really wordy. And for me, when you're looking at a medium that's, supposed to be pictures telling the story with few words on there, it was it was a really heavy read. It wasn't complex. It wasn't super dense, but there was a lot of it. So it felt like somebody who was a writer was trying to write a comic book. And it's a little bit different because they're giving you more information that you need verbally that you were already getting visually. So it was almost like doubling down on it. But yeah, but like I said, it doesn't take away from the writing itself. So I thought the writing was really good. I think the only thing that was missing, like I said, was sort of like that. Where was the, West African flair or that portion mixed in? But the little surprises here and there, the little jokes here and there, they got me. The artist Kelsey Ramsey, really, really good stuff. I like this like scratchy, like artwork that they have. It's not super finished, but it looks really, really good and really cool. And especially for this book. I mean, when you're talking about sort of like the horror genre, you're talking about the werewolves, you don't want a lot of clean lines. You want it almost to be like where you step back and you can see sort of like the tension in the lines, and it sort of gives mood to the panels on the page. So it's pretty cool. I mean, I liked it for a one shot. It was great. I think if they move forward with this, if they can get enough people interested in this, I think there's a place definitely for it. I think it's missing all that background information. I would love to have sort of like that origin. We're walking into werewolves already existing amongst people, not everybody knowing that they exist, but what's the lore of this particular werewolf? And are there different clans? Is there like an East African clan? Are they just based in Africa? Is there a North American clan kind of thing? I think you can do a lot of shit with this, which would be really cool. It's just a shame that it was just a one shot. However, with that being said, it did intrigue me enough to say, where the fuck is everything else? So I think if there's enough interest in it, and I think, when it comes to like the actual, like the monsters, the universal monsters, werewolf, Dracula, Frankenstein, all that stuff, I think there's enough people out there that are interested in it that I think we could get it. I mean, the creative team was really great. I think the only thing that I would say is if the writer is going to continue with this, just to pull back on some of the, I guess, duplicated information from what you're seeing to what you're reading, and just minimize the script a little bit more, then we can get a little bit more out of it. But yeah, it was pretty cool.
Yeah. I love the experiment, the Horizon experiment. It's I think when I read Sacred Damned and I talked about it here, I said it's sort of like pilot season for television shows, right? So each one, is intended to be a standalone, but to whet your appetite for more. And based on sales or demand or requests, there one or all or some might get an ongoing or at least a mini to flesh everything out. You made a really interesting point about. So yeah, there's diversity in the log line, right? It's as Portsak Pichochet, I'm always terrible with his last name.
Yes.
But as he's the cultivator of this, he's sort of and as he says in the thing, it's sort of like a write what you know kind of a thing. So his book, The Manchurian or Secret Asian Man, I don't know why they didn't go with that title, but that I didn't get to read that one. But again, it's sort of that's kind of coming in his wheelhouse. That's the Asian James Bond, right?
Right.
The one I read, Sacred Damned, the Muslim John Constantine, used the Jinn, DGINN, were a big part of her narrative thrust, and I thought that it was that's the thing, is it was a nice balance between cultural touchstones and then just regular storytelling, like just basic narrative, and I think that's a tough thing because you don't want it to be so heavy. You don't want the whole thing to be about I am this type of a person. Right. But you also don't want to have like throwing in just a cultural reference just to throw in a cultural reference, right? So it's really nice. You have to really find that nice balance. I thought Sacred Damned found that balance in that narrative, and I think because that person also was a comic book writer, so also knew how to write a complete first issue, right, and then give you these tantalizing hints for what's there. With Moondog's writer coming from the world of novels, I think, it was like a little bit of a hurdle based on what you're saying. Yeah. But I love this experiment. I love this idea. I'm really looking forward to checking out the next two books. I do want to check out Moondogs, and I still have to back check and give Manchurian a shot. Yeah.
And I think if you go back, I mean, obviously, if you see an Asian character and he's part of MI6, you're going to get that James Bond kind of thing in there. As far as cultural reference, I don't know what would be inside the book. I haven't read it. I think I might go back and check that out as well. And from what you told me, using the Jinn for this Muslim Constantine, that kind of made sense. Here, there wasn't any connection between East Africa, unless I missed it completely. and the setting in Miami with these particular characters. Even being around her family, like everything was written, and not if you come from another country. It didn't say they even came from another country. It just says East African descent. She could have been born here,
right?
Because I'm Puerto Rican descent. I have no Spanish accent at all whatsoever. I barely speak Spanish, so you can remove yourself from that. But I think if first generation or even second generation parents would bring some of that culture to the table. And they did bring in this sort of like the tea stuff, but the tea stuff was mostly for being able to control transformations, not a cultural thing that this is from East Africa, whatever it is.
Yeah.
Maybe I was just putting too much on it, but when you're talking about an experiment, you want to be able to sprinkle some of that stuff in. It was just missing, but it didn't take away from the story.
Yeah. It's funny. I'm thinking now again about that log line that for the Sacred Dam, the Muslim John Constantine, and it sort of, I think, undersells exactly what that character is. Because first of all, it is a female character, which adds another layer on top of the Muslim identity thing too, which is really interesting. So it's just funny. I just was thinking like, well, yeah, John Constantine's a good touchstone for that, but yeah, it's funny because I felt like Living Hell from Dark Horse for a couple weeks ago. That was more of a in my mind what I would picture like that a Muslim John Constantine would be like. But yeah, I like Sacred Dam. This seems pretty cool.
Yeah, I almost think that you didn't even need a tagline because you could just have made these stories and people wouldn't really have noticed much.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, I guess that's why it's an experiment. All right, off you go. You're up.
All right, I'm going to smash these two together a little bit, even though they are wildly different, but they are both from Dark Horse, and it kind of is interesting. It kind of, because a couple weeks ago, Living Hell and FML were two Dark Horse books that I read for that week, and I pointed out the difference between just the packaging of the book, right? Living Hell, a new writer artist, had that self cover, really thin. FML, Kelly Sue DeConnick, kind of a name writer, marquee writer, had the nice stock glossy cover, extra pages, no ads, back matter, right? So these two are also from creators that I'm not that familiar with, and so they sort of get what I'll call the Living Hell treatment. So they're very standard thin comic self cover, which means that the the paper stock on the cover is pretty much the same as the paper stock inside the book too. So the first one I'm going to tackle here is called Barstow. This is written by David Ian McKendry and Rebecca McKendry, illustrated by Tyler Jenkins, lettered by Justin Birch, edited by Brett Israel, assistant editor Tara McCarran. Also, there's a designer, Riley Van Dyke credit, digital art technician credit for Joey Weaver, and a pre-press technician credit for Jake Johnson. I always think that's kind of cool that they give those folks a little shout out as well.
Yeah.
So this book is really interesting. I'm going to definitely say, I mean, just from the cover, you can kind of see there's a little bit of a body horror thing going on here. Some of that sort of body horror stuff that you get inside this book reminds me of the recent Golgotha Motor Mountain series from I think that was I want to say it was an IDW original, and so it's really that kind of gross sort of body horror that creeps in. The setting is Barstow, California. You kind of start with this car accident, right? And I just kind of want to give you a sense of what's going on. This guy's driving a car, crashes his car. He runs out of the car. Out of the back of the car, this other guy falls out, right? So the guy was in the trunk of the car, right? Because the car got flipped. And then, boom, he's standing there as the car explodes. And then you see the guy's kind of all stuck, all spread. He got split in half in the explosion. So he gets up, he pulls himself, literally, come on, buddy, pull yourself together. Nice. Yeah, and then start walking away. So that's sort of what you're dealing with here. This is Barstow, California, very desert type town. As the writers say in their sort of, hey, this is what the book is about. They were on a cross-country road trip, and they wound up in Barstow, and they were just struck by the David Lynchian vibe. So this really has like a David Lynch, Coen Brothers sort of thing going on here. You get introduced to a lot of different and disparate characters, and then along that you get this whole thing with like creepy demons under there, so it's I don't know exactly what's going on right now, besides the fact that you have this FBI agent that is investigating a murder in the town, and you, like I said, you get introduced to like sort of the ballet instructor crime boss. She's like the crime boss, and she's a ballet instructor.
Okay.
You kind of see her the way she tortures somebody who has wronged her, but using somebody who's possessed by one of these demons in this town. So it's that kind of a book. It's just really weird, bizarre, and out there, and uncomfortable and unnerving. I'm guessing it's a miniseries because I don't know how long you could sustain something like that unless you really got a lot of tricks up your sleeve. Tyler Jenkins' art is it's really cool. It's very much along that sort of Jeff Lemire and sometimes like little Chip Zdarsky, sometimes like that sort of rough line. And the pacing's really good and really weird and really interesting. You can really hear like an Angelo Badalamenti score going underneath some of this stuff. Just some really weird characters. So I'm kind of into the ride. I know we like to talk about like, is this something you want to read issue to issue? Would you want to wait until this is all collected? I think the weirdness of this makes me want to read this issue to issue. So I thought it was a really good and weird setup. And again, right in my wheelhouse where you have that touch of gross supernatural, but it's all taking place now. Everybody's real, but just a little bit off, just like real life. So I kind of dug what's happening in here. Not for everybody though. I don't think it's really going to be everybody's cup of tea. But I like a good mystery, and Ralph Dibny, the Elongated Man from DC Comics. This book kind of has my nose twitching because it seems like it's a good mystery.
Nice.
Yeah.
Okay.
So the other book from Dark Horse was called "You Never Heard of Me." And this is clearly, it says it is a 5-issue miniseries, so that's good to know. It is written by Iolanda Zanfardino, illustrated by Elisa Ramboli, colored by Elisa Ramboli and Iolanda Zanfardino, and Iolanda lettered it as well.
Nice.
So I like that she's really all in on this. Edited by Rose Weitz, designer Rebecca Key, digital art technician Betsy Howitt, and pre-press Darby McCann. So this is a really interesting book. I really love the fictional narrative conceit or concept of someone who has a power where they could touch somebody and then see their past, their present, their future, right? And so your main character is a teenage boy who you're following, who is living with his older sister and his single father and his grandmother. And his grandmother has this power. And because of this power, they could never really stay in one place too long. And that's also eventually what sort of drove the mother to leave, so that's where the father became a single father, because they would just keep going town to town because they would, because the powers would always sort of overwhelm their lives. Because I get the sense that the grandmother was very open about the power, because depending on when you touch somebody, their future will change based on decisions they've made, right? So if I touched you and I saw your future yesterday, and then you made a whole bunch of choices between yesterday and today, and I did it again and looked at your future, would be different. So she would sort of use this power to help people. But then again, that drew attention. So they would, not time to pick up and move and go, somewhere else. So they're in their current town. They haven't been there that long. And the grandmother dies. And the father is expecting to pick up on this power because it's passed down from generation to generation. Except he wasn't with her when she she died, it was the grandson. And so the power goes to the grandson.
Mm.
And the grandson discovers it in high school one day, right? And it's like, it's really funny because he hasn't really bothered to make friends because he's so used to picking up and leaving. And that he, what now all of a sudden it's like he touches somebody and now he knows everything about them, their past, their present, their future. And he's like, I don't even know this person in my day to day. So that was kind of an interesting way to do that. And you kind of start, so it's an interesting way because I think some of these people that he does wind up touching when he first discovers his powers, they're going to start to wind up being the supporting cast. So it's a lot of times you get your supporting cast of friends. They've already been friends for a while. These are the guys I sit with at the table at lunch, right? In these high school type things. But now it's like, these are random strangers that now I'm going to be forced to, I think, bring into my circle. So if that's where that's going, I think that's really cool. I like the idea of the building tension now between the father and the son, because the father is really despondent that not only did his mother pass away, but that the power did not go to him. And he's like, this is it. This is the end of the line. The legacy's over. And the son's like, yeah, I guess so, because he doesn't want to tell him yet. So it's really interesting. I think this is definitely a case of, wait for the 5 issues to be done, read in one sitting. I think it's going to be a lot more effective that way. But I like the idea of not going direct to original graphic novel with this. I like the idea that maybe this is something that was conceived that way, and then they decided to split it into 5 issues, because I think that's a good way to sort of build an audience and grow. I've seen this happen to a lot of books where they've been out for a few months and then all of a sudden people are like, oh, I heard this thing's coming out. Let me, can we get in on that? So I think it's a really good way to build an audience over 5 months.
Right.
Or sometimes the way these books run over a year if it's a 5-issue miniseries, but it's a lateness joke. But the rather than just putting it out as an OGN and it just has one publicity push, sits on the shelf for a month and then people forget about it. So I think it's a good idea to do that from a publishing standpoint and a groundswell and a building anticipation kind of thing. So yeah.
Is there an antagonist, or is it something where he's just kind of discovered his powers and he's
at this point? Yeah, there's no, it really seems like how this kid is going to be navigating high school life with these powers and family life with these powers. I don't think the setup between the father and the son is going to build to that sort of book. It doesn't have that tension at this time of a dark, mysterious anti-power that has been chasing our family for decades. Now, I think this is going to be a little more grounded, and that's going to be your one thing. I could be wrong. There could be definitely a third act swerve that that I don't see coming, but right now I think this looks like a really fun coming of age story for high schoolers, and I think that's a great market for that to reach. I think Dark Horse has done a few things like this, sort of the Buffy set, the Scooby Gang aficionados I think would probably gravitate to something like this. Yeah, cool. Yes, right. You never heard of me. You never heard of this book until today.
All right, why don't you take us into the last one, because I want to hear what you have to say about it.
Oh, yeah. So it's no secret I've really been a fan of Image's Ghost Machine imprint that is basically curated by and written essentially by Jeff Johns up until now. Yes. So there's Geiger, there Junkyard Joe, Redcoat. They're all part of one universe. Rook Exodus is its own universe. Hyde Street is a separate universe. Now we have Family Odysseys is what they're billing this is. It's like, we have tangents within tangents. This is like an imprint within an imprint because Family Odysseys consists of 2 books. The one we're going to talk today and a book coming out next week. They're both written by Peter J. Tomasi, so they're not written by Jeff Johns, but this is Jeff Johns' thing, right? And everybody's got, writers, artists, they all have a piece of the pie. It's very similar to old Image, original Image, except it's within Image. And it's really, like I said, like it's a writer with a band of artists. And now it's 2 writers with bands of artists. So this is called The Rocket Fellers. And man, all right, so Peter J. Tomasi wrote it. Francis Manipal did the art. They both get a story credit. Rob Lee did letters. And we have a designer, Steve Blackwell, editor-in-chief, Brian Cunningham. And it's really, again, there's really no other assistant editor, solo editor kind of thing. So this is really just comics in the hands of the creators, which I think is really, really cool.
Well, not just creators, seasoned creators.
Well, yeah, exactly. They're just this is seasoned creators because Geoff Johns has a wealth of work. Every artist, Gary Frank, Brian Hitch, Ivan Rice, Jason Fabok, in this case Francis Manapul. The other book that Tomasi's writing, again Tomasi season pro,
yes, I know,
is with Peter Snejberg. So these are guys who know what they're doing. And what's amazing, I think, is in a lot of ways for guys like Brian Hitch, that Geoff Johns is able to get these guys to hit deadlines too. So there's something about what's going on at Ghost Machine, because each one of these artists are brilliant and amazing in their own right and have done some stellar work for the big two. But since they've been with Ghost Machine, they've I don't know, man, they've been all in. They've been putting it all on the page. The art has been so above and beyond what these guys have done when they had the editorial oversight of the big two.
Right.
Like, these guys have been allowed to cut loose with the promise of a piece of the pie, especially in the multimedia thing, because that's sort of where I think this is going, or Jeff wants it to go, because that's the world that he comes from, film and television. So I love what's going on with Ghost Machine, and I just love the output and what's coming out. And so the Rockefellers is amazing. This is very much a sort of like a Fantastic Four meets Challengers of the Unknown kind of thing, which are great. Those are classic Kirby illustrated and co-conceived concepts, which is great because I've always felt Francis Manapul is one of the artists today that really does channel Kirby. I mean, right there with the hand, right? He does like these dynamic foreshortened, like coming at you Kirby type poses. I think his page layouts are very Kirby-esque, and does his best to sort of try and push boundaries of what panels can do. And then, just does some fun stuff like putting the title right there in the art. So I think he just has all of Kirby's dynamism, but he has so much of his own flair that he puts into it that it is just, I think it's just amazing and beautiful, gorgeous artwork.
Yeah. All right. So I was going to show that same page because I agree with you. Put that page back up.
Yeah. Okay.
So if you put it really close to the camera, because I think one of the things that he did really, really well is, all right, so you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 plus a dog, 6 in there. But if you look at their individual expressions, he's so good at making each character expressive in a different way.
Yep.
So they're all reacting to this one thing differently.
Yeah.
And you can see it in their faces. He's such a good freaking artist,
and the perfect artist for this book, because it begins as a crazy sci-fi adventure, because you have this family. Their name is Rockefeller. They are a family of scientists in the 25th century or 24th century, and they are on the run, and they are looking for this time travel device that's going to bring them back to the present day. And so the first half is all slam bang science fiction adventure, and then the second half is a year later as they've been living in our time, and how they are trying to just basically navigate as being a typical American, family. And like, we're having a barbecue, or it's Thanksgiving, right? But the hook is, since they're super scientists, they're able to have a pool party in Thanksgiving up in like Washington State, right? And the patriarch Roland Rockefeller. That's the other thing. They all have R. It's all the double R alliteration. His neighbor's like, wow, how'd you get these heaters to work like this? Well, you bypass certain governmental restrictions that they put into these units, and you can do whatever you want. And it's like, that's a great cover for the fact, like, because you can't say, yeah, I'm from 400 years in the future. So it was really neat. And then I love, there's a sequence at the end, where as a family, once the Thanksgiving pool party is over, they sort of blow off steam, as only sort of super scientist adventure families can do,
Right.
where they just basically go up in a helicopter and they just go skydiving in these just futuristic sort of suits, these wingsuit kind of things. And there was so much charm in this, along with like the seriousness, I guess, of their situation, because they do find out that this is going to be more than a temporary setback, and it's going to take them a while to get back to the future. And meanwhile, because of why they're there, which we get a sort of hint of at the end, it looks really gross, whatever that thing is. They're obviously going to run into some more obstacles and more people hunting them, like at the beginning of the first issue. But yeah, just something that really, really captures what comics are about, man.
Yes. No, I agree 100%. I got a lot of Lost in Space, Family Robinson kind of feels off of this. You see the separation obviously between the two, but they're just so close and sort of like that genre. Just the voices on them are completely different. And this is where I was talking about before, the difference between somebody who's written a ton of comics to someone who's a writer and attempting to write a comic. And this is just written for somebody who reads comics, because there's just enough information, but you get to really enjoy what Francis Manapul puts down on the freaking page, because it's just beautiful. And you got a lot in here. You got a lot in regards to, we don't really know their background per se, because you're kind of thrown right into sort of like, I would say Superman #1 movie, where it's just Krypton is about to blow up and that's it. It leads like the first 10 minutes, you got the destruction of a planet. So within the first couple of these pages, you have all this frantic running of the family away from something, but parents being typical parents, because they're not telling the children that they're running from something, but that they're going on a mini vacation.
Yeah.
But they have this cyborg / bounty hunter chasing them. And then you have sacrifice in the book.
Yeah.
I wish there would have been a little bit to almost humanize it, to have a little bit of mourning for the sacrifice, but it is what it is. You got a lot out of it. I think what was even funnier is that when you're talking about jumping from the helicopter, as to blow off steam, I was like, all right, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 that have jumped out. The dog was flying the fucking helicopter with these like extended arms, which is great.
Yeah, I can't. I think it's a robot dog, right?
No, it's not. It's a real dog.
Like a harness that the dog was using.
Yes, the harness that he was using.
Great.
So you got the family. They escaped their timeline, are stuck in our timeline, and Roland's brother is out there trying to let them know when it's okay for them to come back and it's safe. And then we discover why they were running away at the very end. And as gross as it is, it's pretty cool. So I'm right up there. I like this. I mean, Jeff Johns is not stupid. He's been in the business for a long time on, this end, on the Hollywood end, and just put together a really, solid creative team, and took a genre that are familiar with, but kind of turned it on its head, because it was fun to read. The little girl's hysterical, Ray. And if you've not picked up anything from Ghost Machine, this is probably one of the best ones that you can pick up.
Yeah.
And sort of like that Family Odyssey. And then the book that he was talking about before, it's coming out next week, is Hornsby and Halo, which I'm looking forward to as well, because it gave me sort of like New Gods vibes, where heaven and hell are switching their firstborns and raising them to see what happens. So it's like a nature versus nurture kind of thing. And being written by Peter Tomasi. So
yeah, and I think he's a great choice for this Family Odysseys imprint within the imprint, because he's really played a lot of his strengths, because he's good at big sci-fi. He's also good at sort of more grounded, introspective, or even supernatural elements that Hornsby and Halo might have. Plus, I mean, two of his biggest successes, I think, with DC were really making Damian Wayne a likable character, and having Batman kind of kind of ease into that dynamic of being Bat Dad, but also made Superman a dad to John Kent, when he was 10 years old, and everybody liked the character, because again, that's a crime that they aged up, magically aged up that character. But when Tomasi was writing that book, it was a new dynamic for Superman that we hadn't really seen in regular continuity, and he did really well with it. And so to see that strength be portrayed in here, I think is really cool. Yeah, and I love, I know that we're going to get some flash forwards, I guess, to them in the future, how they got to that point. So we're going to, see a little bit, I think, more of context to that relationship and that sacrifice that was thrust at the beginning. But I think it was a great narrative thing to be like, again, like with G.I. Joe #1, this whole idea that everybody's on the table. No one is safe, right? No one has that. Not everybody has that plot armor. I also love the idea that throughout most of the issue, you think that they're stranded there with no connection to the where they came from,
to the future, right?
And then you see that not only do they have a line of communication, but there's more members of the Rockefeller family, as well at play, because the brother could have a whole family as well. So there's a lot under using this sort of this name as the title. There's a lot of room in this sandbox that Peter Tomasi's building. So cool.
No, I liked it. Yeah, if you're gonna read anything this week, definitely pick up a copy of Rockefellers. You won't be disappointed. Yeah, I'm looking forward to the next issue on this one, and then even the next one coming out.
Yeah, and I like that the Reed Richards guy looks like Pedro Pascal.
There you go. It's already being written for a real life actor, which is fantastic. So yeah, and you know what's funny, because you mentioned something before, and I just remember off the top of my head something that happened recently in regards to the comic book world, and this would be really good advice for anybody who's looking for distribution, especially with a reputable distribution company. Say if you're going to go with Diamond, Lunar, or try to get yourself on PRH or anything like that, Penguin Random House. So Scout Comics recently got dropped by Lunar because they were delayed in a bunch of their books. Yeah. So if you're going to put yourself out there and want to have something that's going to be continuing to come out, make sure that it's on time. There's a lot of stuff out there. And, if, a distributor does pick you up, there's a sense of responsibility. There's not a sense. There is a responsibility that you have as a creator to have your stuff out on time. And it's crazy because Scout's been out for a little bit. And, it was far and few in between when we started seeing some of their stuff, which is crazy. So a lot of stuff started getting delayed. So, yeah, I mean, their stuff is still out there. It would have been good to see if, them keep up and, not get dropped from a distributor. I believe you can still get them through Diamond, but I think when you're delayed enough, you have enough stuff that's out there, you're going to have people that are going to pull back and lose interest in what you have coming out because there's no consistency, unfortunately.
Yeah, well, yeah. It's funny that you made me think of something. I happened to see a Facebook post by a editor-in-chief and main writer of a popular, or unpopular, an infamous, we'll call it, comic book media website that loves to scoop things. Sometimes they're really good at it. Sometimes they're a little rude about it. They play a little dirty, but it's still my go-to. But anyway, asking people who were still owed money for work they did on Heavy Metal Magazine to DM him. Because of that whole thing. We talked about that a while ago. Opus, I think it was.
Yep.
That had made the deal with the Frazetta family.
Yeah.
And to end volume 1 of Heavy Metal with a big crazy issue, and then restart Heavy Metal Magazine again, and just took art and never paid people, and all of that stuff, all those Heavy Metal plans never happened, and just it's so icky sometimes, when
and they're still around, which is crazy.
Well, Opus, Opus has
not Opus, but the people that bought Heavy Metal.
Well, yeah, they still are holding on to that, and
yes,
yeah,
but not doing anything with it. Yeah. It's just crazy. It's all crazy, but it's all good. All right, well, there you go. You have your books for this week. You got to get out there to your local comic book shops and make sure you pick up some of these. There's some really good stuff coming out, which is great. I'm excited. Like each week that Wednesday comes around, super excited to see what's coming out. So yeah, this Ghost Machine stuff that's going on in Image, really great stuff. So keep it up, Jeff. Keep getting these creators on board. All right, if you like what you heard, please subscribe to the podcast. Better yet, invite like 1,000 more people that you know to just come to the podcast. We're going to be here every Monday at 1 p.m. If you're a creator and want to promote yourself and or project that you have coming up, go to amazingactioncomics.com, fill out the form. We'd love to have you on. John and I would just talk comics and comics forever. Stay up to date on everything that we've got going on at amazingactioncomics.com. And then please, 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 most importantly, support your local comic book shop by visiting them on Wednesdays, New Comic Day, and picking up some of your favorite reads. Yeah, and better yet, support indie comics, small publishers, small press, and pick up one of their books, something you normally wouldn't pick up, and who knows, you might be amazed by something amazing. See what I did there? John, where do you get your books from?
Well, I get my comics at The Joker's Child in Fair Lawn, New Jersey. And yeah, every Wednesday, man, it's like Christmas every day. We get new comics, we get new toys. It's so much fun. But I also like Sunday mornings because we have a website, jokerschild.com, where every Sunday morning at 8 a.m., Angel works very hard to get all those listings up so that we can all get a jump on our Wednesdays by scrolling through and looking at all the great comics and toys and stuffed animals and pops and everything that comes out every week. And you know what? It's holiday time, so might as well get something every week. You go out, you go to your local comic shop, you come down to the Joker's Child, you buy a gift for someone, and then you buy a little gift for yourself too. Because you know what? You deserve a nice gift for the holidays. So get your gifts at the Joker's Child in Fair Lawn, New Jersey, or your local comic shop near you.
All right, folks, that is all that we have for you this week. Until next time, please be amazing, stay amazing, and read something amazing.